like the darkness was closing in, when it feels like that, when you feel like the darkness is closing in, maybe it's not because there's too much darkness, maybe because there isn't enough light. Today's guest is someone who has dedicated her life to becoming that light, to giving hope to others. Because legacy isn't always something you build. Sometimes it's something that's spoken over you. Sometimes it's something an older person or an elder sees in you before you can name it for yourself. In this episode of Legacy Her Way, we begin with a term I'll admit I was completely unfamiliar with before I read it in Britton-Hathaway's bio, which is Indigenous Two-Spirit. It's an identity that isn't self-declared, but is recognized and affirmed by tribal elders, rooted in spiritual balance and sacred responsibility. And our guest today, Kali, took that responsibility very seriously. From our initial discussion talking about what is an Indigenous Two-Spirit, the conversation actually goes a lot deeper. We talk about healing the mind, the body, and the spirit. We talk about grief and trauma. We talk about suicide prevention, the myths that keep people silent, and what it can look like to step in with compassion when someone is struggling. This episode of Legacy Her Way is a heavy conversation, but it's a necessary one. We talk a lot about suicide, and it is a necessary thing to discuss and talk about because it happens. We have to address it, and we need to help others have the hope they need to not take their own lives. So if you're a mother, a grandmother, a mentor, or simply someone who cares about the people around you, I want you to listen closely, lean in, and listen to what Kali has to say and the wisdom she has to share with us, coming from her experiences and her background, working with different people and working with those who have suicidal ideations or are suicidal. Because this episode is about planting seeds of hope and choosing compassion as a legacy. This is Legacy Her Way. Kali Britton-Hathaway is the proprietor of Kali's Organic Sessions, teaching free in-person at-home learning Zoom classes for suicide prevention. Kali is an Indigenous Two-Spirit raised as a keeper of their stories from their maternal grandmother who taught them the traditional ways of interacting with the land and spirit. Kali is the new AmeriCorps Mental Health Crisis Instructor at UAB, Student Counseling Services, and the AmeriCorps representative on the UAB Suicide Prevention Committee. Welcome to the show, Kali. I'm so happy that you're here today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, we have a lot to unpack here. But I want to start with this Indigenous Two-Spirit. So admittedly, I was completely unfamiliar with that term before I saw this in your bio. And as I prepared for the interview, I was like, I got to find out what this is. And so I researched it, and it's fascinating. So tell the listeners, what is Indigenous Two-Spirit?
Yes. So Indigenous Two-Spirit is someone that actually inhabits both female and male spirit, masculine and the feminine, within the same spirit. So that is something that is usually passed down generation to generation in most cases within, certain Indigenous tribes. It's something that they still hold dear to themselves. They were a lot of times the healers of their tribes. So, I really feel that I've really housed that in more than one way. And the healer aspect has really came very naturally to me. And so, I was involved in an MMIW event at the Birmingham Museum of Art back in 2019.
What is MMIW? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. So that is actually Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. It is a movement, yes. We have so many women, girls, boys, along with, Two-Spirit, that have undergone so much trauma and tragedy. And sadly, a lot of those individuals stay trafficked or missing. And so we really want to bring awareness to that so that we can get some aid to help these tribes become whole again, and make sure that we're taking good care to keep those women safe. So there was an amazing photographer that had done a huge, beautiful spread. The red dress, the red ribbon dress especially, and she'd done some beautiful artwork with photography there. And we had all of the tribes come in to the museum. We did drum circles, provided native foods like fry bread to people that maybe had never tried fry bread.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I was really blessed during a drum dance by the chief there. And he said, you are two-spirit. And so that is when you are actually allowed to say that you are two-spirit. You're not allowed to just say one day, I think I want to be a two-spirit. That's who I am. No, you actually have to be given that status by an elder tribe member. And so I was blessed to be able to have that given to me by him that day. And since it all made sense, and it was so nice to have that blessing and that encouragement to go forth. And with that, I really wanted to do more, it felt like, not just for my tribes, for, the other parts of myself that isn't Indigenous. I do have some Nigerian ancestry, freedmen here in Alabama. And I also come from a long line of Romani people as well, from the Welsh side of the world. So, I really enjoy that exists in every single aspect. That two-spirit does exist in all of those other areas. It just has different names. But I've been blessed and love the two-spirit and love to be able to explain it and talk to people about it.
So I find it interesting that the elder had to tell you or give you that permission, so to speak. Did you already know that there was or had someone already spoken that into you? Did you feel like there was already something there and just the elder had to bless it? Or was it something the elder saw in you and said, you are two-spirit?
I always, and my grandmother, she pretty much raised me when my mother and my father worked. We had some property. We lived basically straight from the land. So I had a lot of her teachings early on, and she always looked at me and told me, you're special. You really care about plants and plant medicine, and you want to know all the history where the other 25 of your cousins, they didn't really want to do that. They had other things to do. And I just really was so connected with her in that way. And so I always knew. I knew there was something different. And, but when I got the blessing is when that was like them saying, yes, confirmation, confirmation. And then, yes, you are this, and yes, you can go forward as this publicly.
Interesting. And that actually, I have other questions I want to ask about this, but you mentioned that you were really connected to the land and you were really connected to the plants. And then, of course, you felt special and then the Indigenous two-spirit. So one of the questions I often ask people is, at what point did you start thinking more about impact versus achievement? But it sounds like you always thought more on the terms of impact rather than just achieving something great in life, like achieving financial wealth or something like that in life. Is that kind of correct?
That is very correct.
Okay.
Very correct. I've always been led with compassion and empathy for individuals. So, that's always kind of been my center. And, using plants to aid people in their spiritual processes. And then later on, of course, through, psychotherapy modules and going through, the school that I went through. Because originally I actually wanted to be a doctor. And so I went through, all this time to be a doctor in academics. And there, when I was actually going from I would say my last year, in my associate degree, I actually was diagnosed with ovarian cancer.
Mm.
And I really had to start when you get that kind of diagnosis, it changes a lot of your
Yeah.
perceptions.
Yeah.
I think at first I went out to kind of seek the education later in life to get the finances, right?
Mhm.
Because I had 2 boys at home and a husband, and I'd always been a hard worker. And I said, well, I want to do something for me. I want to build something for us. So I went back to school. And, like I said, the diagnosis kind of brought forth what's really important. Why are
Mhm.
you really doing this? Why are you seeking this? And when I really got down to it, I was able to use the knowledge that I gained from the academics and
Mhm.
the knowledge that I'd learned from my grandmother, and I was able to put those things together, and I was able to actually heal myself. I had to go through surgery, of course. I had to go through
Yeah.
all of the good, the fun things that you get to go through.
Yeah.
But at the end, I did not have to go through chemo.
Nice.
I used all, natural plants and medicine. I used my diet,
Mhm.
nutrition. And when I learned how to, that healed me, right?
Yeah.
And then bringing back my spiritual practice more, Indigenous practice, it really opened me up to say, you're in this life for so much more than a paycheck.
Mhm.
You're in this life for so much more than just maybe helping 1 or 2 people. You're here to heal people. You're here to stand beside someone as they're going through a crisis journey, and you're not healing them, but you're standing beside them and you're walking with them on this journey until they're ready to literally walk upon their own journey and their own path.
Mhm.
And that's what really kind of made that big difference. And that's when it all came together. And that's when I really realized, okay, this is what I'm here on earth for.
So what did that lead you to?
So that led me to actually diving deeper into research. I was able to get into Phi Theta Kappa. It's an amazing, um, society, intellectuals, and it really exposed me to. I got to go and do things in Washington. I got to go and do things in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was able to go and be part of that academic world and really lead, and started presenting to over 200 to 2,000 people, which I'd never done before. So
Mhm.
that opened me up to know, okay, you can speak in public places, and people listen, and people are able to take something really good away from that.
Mhm.
So it's like, I started adding those pieces to what I wanted to do. And now I'm here, sadly, because of a tragedy that occurred.
Mm.
One of the friends of my son's, who I had a very close relationship with for about 4 years, he chose to end his life.
Mm.
And that really affected me. And
Yeah.
then probably the very next year, one of my best friends who was in Phi Theta Kappa with me, they lost their transgender son, um, Jay, to suicide, and they were only in middle school. And I said,
Wow.
okay, there's got to be something that I can do. I can't just sit here and gain knowledge and, you know, and want to go down this road to heal people. I need to do more than that. I need to find something that works.
Mhm.
Um, and that's when I started really delving deeper into, self-care, um, prevention versus postvention.
Yeah.
And I was able to get in contact with AmeriCorps and the National Mental Health. And, that really inspired me. And I got to go on the 988, and I was a crisis line operator. And by doing that and speaking to people, I realized that certain things that I'd gathered as tools was saving lives.
Wow.
And I said, okay, we've got to get these tools out there. We've got to make this more accessible. And then, of course, I was able to I took a couple of years just to kind of self-care on my own because I really
Mhm.
needed it. It's very strenuous. Thank those 988 operators every day because they are doing amazing work.
Mhm.
And I was able to get back into my role now here at the AmeriCorps. And I've been working for a couple of years on that self-care of myself on the Colley's Organic Sessions to make these practices available to everybody, to make sure that everyone has access to the tools that are necessary. And working with the suicide prevention, the mental health advocate program, and the certification at UAB, I'm learning another aspect of that. So it's not just tools, but more of making sure that the communities around everybody are aware, making sure that they know the signs, that they know what to say to somebody that's struggling in a mental health crisis situation. And being able to really have classes where I have, 30 students and they're so accepting and excited to learn what they can do because they feel helpless. Just like way back then, I felt helpless. And so it's now I'm able to do the preventative right in the middle of care. And then we do help with the postventive care. So that's part of the committee work that I was asked to do there, where we're actually planning ways to prevent, making sure that there are, places on campus that people can go, that they know that they have free counseling at their disposal as a student. And we even do presentations that teach, okay, there's this on campus. You have these apps available to you. You have 24 access to someone who deeply cares about you. And then we also have self-care presentations that I love doing, where I really get to walk through with students on what is self-care and how can I make a self-care plan for me, personalized to myself. And so it's just really, everything's just exploding up right now, it feels like. And I'm really taking off with Cowley's Organic Sessions because now I have, the certification to teach the QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer. That's a preventative, suicidal prevention program certification. And then that certifies others to where if they want to go and be a gatekeeper instructor, they can take that certification and go straight over to SAMHSA and sign up and be certified to be able to teach. So we're passing on, this ability to recognize, to know the words to say, to give people hope that are hopeless. And then with MHFA, it's first aid. So we go deeper. It's an all day, 8 hours. Really what I do is 2 hours a week for 4 weeks straight on that one, because I really feel like people need the time for self-care throughout that, because we're really deep diving into suicide prevention, disorders, everything that you could come in contact with, crisis, mental health. And we're teaching you what to do in those circumstances and how to refer someone locally to aid.
This episode of Legacy Her Way is sponsored by Huntsville Estate Planning Lawyer, helping you protect your family and what you're building and preserve the legacy you are creating. Your family and your life's work deserves more than hope. It deserves a plan. Contact Huntsville Estate Planning Lawyer today to make your plan. And I do want to say here, suicide is a very sensitive subject.
Yes.
I've had friends who lost spouses to suicide. It's one of those things that people still don't really like to talk about. It's funny because I've heard people say, don't talk about it because it'll plant an idea in someone's mind. Believe me, those of you listening, the idea is already in their mind. It's you talking about it is not going to make them start thinking about doing it. Other than that, what are some other common misconceptions about suicide?
So these are things that I go over with, of course, in my QPR. And so, just like you said, we do like a Q&A, kind of a fun little Q&A with people, see what they know and what they don't know about it. And that's one of those questions is, if I talk about it, is someone going to do it? No, that's a stigma, right? That's what we've got to break, is these stigmas about suicide. People want to talk about what's going on. Another stigma that we see is there's nothing that you can do about it. When someone has that in their mind, they're going to follow through. There's nothing you can do. No, it's actually what we say. It really is the most stoppable situation. it just takes one person to show empathy, care, and give that person hope, and hopefully be able to give them a local referral so that they can get that help that they really do need, find the root cause. But yeah, there's so many stigmas around mental health. Mental health people, oh, they're aggressive, they're angry, they're looking to hurt somebody. No, not always. Most of the times, your people that are suffering with, suicidal ideations, they're the complete opposite of that. Their thought process is, I'm creating havoc, and I need to fix that by removing myself out of it. So they need to be reminded, no, we need you here. Everybody that is on this earth, we need you. There's nobody that it doesn't have a job, that doesn't have something that they're supposed to do here on this earth. So, we're wanting to give them hope, and we want to make sure that we're giving them love and non-judgment. A lot of people will say, and this is something I've heard myself so many times over and over and over again, is that person was just so selfish. They were selfish to take themselves out of this world, or think about something like taking themselves out of this world. That's so untrue. They're some of the most unselfish people. They just need someone to reach their hand out and pull them up and say, hey, I got you. We got this. Let's go find somebody that can help us.
Yeah. And I do think when people are at that point, it's not selfishness. They're actually thinking about the others around them, because they're thinking, like you said, I'm the chaos. I'm causing all this. It's actually doing them a favor if I remove myself. And so I hope that listeners will take that in and understand that when someone's at that point of suicide, it's really not necessarily them thinking about themselves and it's the easy way out. It's that they love the people around them and they're trying to reduce that chaos that they believe they're causing, and just continue to love those people around them. Make sure that if you have someone in your life who is suicidal, you've heard them talk about it. We're going to talk in just a second. I'll ask you the signs. But just, listen, love them, and understand that it's not selfishness. So what are the signs that people need to be looking for?
Yes. So we have signs such as there's behavioral cues, right? So a lot of times if, our main sign that goes across the board is if someone has attempted suicide before. And also if someone has lost someone to suicide. That's always a big indicator that you're already kind of almost prone to thinking and suicidal ideation. But then the other symptoms are going to be things like you start noticing people pulling away from the things that they used to love to do. That's a big indicator. Someone that used to dress up and love to go outside and go do things, all of a sudden they're starting to isolate. They're not taking as much care of their hygiene. They're not really taking care of their outside appearances as much. A big indicator is when people give away things that they love. So we've seen, especially within pet owners, a lot of times people will give away their pets. They'll give away, if they're a photographer, they'll start giving away their photography equipment, things that they have to live. Those are some signs. Sometimes people get, like I said, isolation is a huge sign. When you start seeing people pulling away and isolating, that is a huge sign that someone needs help. And then a lot of times, and this is something people sometimes don't know, is that, a lot of times people say, well, it came out of nowhere. There were no signs. Most of the time, if you look back, and I've done this in my experience too, you look back and then all of a sudden hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
The sign was there. They were talking about it. Even if it was in jest and they tried to make it a joke, we need to take that seriously. When someone jokes about, I'm not that important, I don't need to, I won't be here for that. We need to take that. We need to take a step back and a step in and say, I heard you say that you don't feel that you're important or that you're not going to be here. What did you mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, leading with empathy, I always
Yeah.
say. But yeah, I mean, those are a lot of the signs. Those are the most common signs and symptoms: the isolation, the withdrawal, and the giving the personal items. And then, of course, talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people that do follow through with their suicide ideations, they spoke about it 3 weeks before they did it.
Wow.
Just about every single situation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few out there, of course, that there was no pickup on that. There was no discussion of that. But most of the time, they talk about it 3 weeks prior. So really just listening.
Yeah. And as we're recording this, and we're recording this in late February 2026, and just this week, I saw circulated on Facebook, some of my friends have posted a GoFundMe account for some parents whose sixth grade daughter committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And the very thing you just talked about, where I don't know, but from the parent's perspective, what she said at home,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly there were people in her life at school that heard her talking about it. And it doesn't seem like, based on what I've read, that anyone went to a teacher or trusted adult or anyone and said, hey, there's a problem. Maybe they did. And maybe the trusted adult said, yeah, I used to work with child sex abuse. And so I can attest that there are times that people go to a trusted adult and say something that trusted adult just kind of waves it off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know all the circumstances here. I don't know everything that happened. I just want to bring that up as an example of, because most of my audience listening to this podcast are going to be women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, probably. Maybe you have children, maybe you have grandchildren. Encourage them that if they hear something, say something. If one of their friends says, I'm thinking about killing myself, or I don't want to live, or whatever those words may be, that indicates they are thinking through that and don't think they're going to be around any longer. Talk to somebody, tell somebody about that, speak up. Because one, you don't want your child or grandchild to live with the regret of not saying that. You don't want them to blame themselves for that. Mm-hmm. But you also want them to understand there are some things you don't keep secret. There are some things you need to tell, and it's okay to tell those things. And you can ruin the friendship, as Taylor Swift would say, you can ruin the friendship, but you could be saving someone's life. So please, for those of you listening, talk to your children and grandchildren, and not just those adults in your life, but talk to those children and grandchildren about speaking up. If you hear something, say something, so that number one, you can save a life, but number two, you don't live with the regret and the questions and the blame of it. So how do you started out with, I started talking about Indigenous Two-Spirit. And by the way, we're going to have, in the show notes, we're going to have the phone number for suicide prevention hotline, any links to resources that may be out there. I certainly want anyone listening who is thinking about suicide, who's got suicide ideations, please seek help. Even if it's you reach out to me personally, I don't care. You don't know me, people. I've had people reach out to me with stories, not necessarily from the podcast, but because I've worked with so many women who have been sexually assaulted and abused, I get people just send me their stories all the time. So if you have no one else to speak to, please reach out to me and get some help. Because I don't want, you have a purpose in this life, and I want you to live for that. So this podcast is about legacy, and you've got a lot that you can talk about with legacy. You've got your Indigenous Two-Spirit, you've got the work with suicide prevention, and maybe those two are kind of connected. So what is your legacy? What do you see your legacy as?
I mean, my legacy is really being able to, I want to just plant seeds of hope. That's my legacy. My legacy, I want to plant seeds of hope. I want my legacy, of course, I want to be able to take these tools and these teachings, because, I truly believe that healing starts in the body. We've got to make sure that the body is at a baseline good balance. I want to work on things like, I want to be able to have a legacy of nutrition, how important nutrition is to the body, how important if you are misaligned in your vitamins or your minerals in your body. All of these things can cause cognitive issue and can cause a hard time. You were talking about individuals who suffer from sexual abuse, and working with survivors of sexual abuse. And, I also have been able to work alongside with people that have gone through those things. And, even I personally have been through those things as well. So, I kind of have this model of what I didn't see in the world when I needed it. And I want that legacy to be that is fully available to anybody who needs it, that they don't have to go through the struggle of trying to figure it out, like a lot of people have to do, especially with mental health. It's horrible that they're trying to figure things out, but it's so hard. And then sometimes it feels so inaccessible. But I want my legacy to leave accessibility. I want it to leave those seeds of hope in the forms of body, mind, and spirit balance. That's what my grandmother taught me. She taught me balance. She knew, bless her heart, she knew I needed it. I'm sure she could have read my spirit every day I spent with her under her skirts, what I needed. And she gave me that. And she's the reason, I attest. She is the reason that I'm still here, because she was the only person that was really around me that gave me love unconditionally, that saw even the differences and said, those are what make you special, to teach me the herbal medicine. And she taught me about, natural things that we can do. I didn't know this at the time, but she was teaching me how to take care of myself and how to take care of the people that would later come into my path. So, having that knowledge, I want to pass that knowledge on. It's something that is dying. Some things, of course, are indigenously protected, but there's a lot of things that are not, and it's things that I feel like need to get out there to the masses, because the masses are struggling right now. Mental health is at an all-time low. And whatever we can do to bring about compassion and empathy, I think is the first step. And then, of course, making all of these tools accessible. And really, a big one that I'm really pushing, again, because of my own issue that I saw, burnout is a huge thing within our practices. So I want to make sure that people have the tools, people have the people that listen, people that can help, but it all starts with our communities. It all starts with not being judgmental of each other, loving one another, and truly being compassionate and caring about each other. I think when you go that route, you can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong. And there's so many people that need healing, and that's how we can start the healing.
Yeah. And I was just reading this morning that when you feel like the darkness is kind of closing in, it's not because there's too much darkness, is there's not enough light. And that we're not doing enough as people of whatever faith or whatever community you're in, you're not doing enough to spread the light. And I just thought that was super fascinating. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I think that kind of just mirrors what you were saying is we as a community have a lot of work to do. We can bring people hope. We can bring people joy and hope that there is a brighter future. And whether they're thinking about suicide, I mean, there is hope. I mean, you may not see it, you may not be able to visualize it, but it's there. And just to keep going one more day. What do you say to the person who may be thinking about suicide?
Well, first thing that I always say that is the most important, I tell this to all of my students, lead with your heart and you can never go wrong. The best thing that you can do for somebody is you can go to them, you can take time, make sure you have enough time. Don't be looking at your watch. Make sure you take that person to where they are not around other people. You have a one-on-one. There's some safety there. And, ask them the question. That's the biggest thing. That's what we teach in QPR is the question. The question is, are you thinking about suicide? We need to know that. Even on 988, that is one of the very first questions that we were taught to ask. Are you thinking about suicide? Do you have a plan? Now, if they do not have a plan, then okay, we have some time here. We can talk, we can walk you over, we can get you set up with an appointment. I will take you to that appointment if necessary. I will do it. That's not a problem to make sure you get there. But if they say, yes, I have a plan, and they tell you that plan, there's no time to waste at that point. Because they're set on their idea of what they want to do. And it's at that time that, I don't leave them. It's 24 hours. If we're together for 24 hours until I can get them over to that, crisis center or, even take them straight to the hospital, then that's imperative to do at that point. And again, the biggest thing you can do for somebody that says, yeah, I'm struggling, I'm thinking about suicide, is number one, non-judgment. 2, just listen. You don't have to say anything, listen. And then the third thing is act. Act in compassion and get that individual referred, get them help. Call 988. That's what I always tell people. Call 988. Even if you're not the person that's, contemplating, if you're the person trying to help. I used to do this all the time as an operator. Friends and family members would call, what do I do? Okay, let's get on a 2-way call and let's call this individual and let them know that you love them, that you see that they need some help, and let's refer them and get them help today if necessary.
If there's someone listening who is suicidal, what would you say to her?
I would say, number 1, you are loved. We want you here, and I want you to pick up your phone and I want you to call 988. And there's going to be a lovely individual on that other line for you that's going to talk to you, is going to listen to you, and is going to help you make a plan, because there's always hope for a brighter day. We just got to get through today. Just worry about taking it one day at a time, and I promise you, it will be worth it.
Well, I know this has been kind of a heavy conversation for everyone, but it's necessary conversation to talk about suicide and suicide prevention because it has affected many of us. Someone we know most likely has been affected by suicide. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, and I think I mispronounced your name earlier. Is it Kali?
Kali, yes.
Kali, okay. So let's talk about Kali's Organic Sessions.
Yes.
What is it and what do you do?
So what Kali's Organic Sessions is it is Self-Care Central is what I call it. So you get in touch with me. Right now I'm working on my website. I'm actually getting some help from someone right now to get that out there. But it's really self-care products, right? So things like essential oils, things like things for infuser, diffusers. I say it's just making sure that all of the senses are taken care of. It's also, I have a nutritionist on board with me. So
Nice.
like I was saying, like we want to take care of the body. These are things that I've learned. A lot of times when people are suffering from mental health issues, one of the number one things that's going on there is there's an imbalance, right? Either chemically or just, there's an imbalance of spirit feeling. So we want to first look at the body. Get that blood work from your doctor. Let's look at it. Let's see if there's anything that's missing that needs to be replenished. Making sure that you're hydrating. So water, spring water. So I have a friend that does the spring water, so we can get that to them. It's really pulling from all of my local resources. I've always been a local gal and I love to support local. So I always, wherever I'm at, I find all of local sources. I'm kind of like your one-stop shop for mental health and self-care through Colley's Organic Sessions. So we replenish, we make sure we get the nutritionist situated, see what we can do to get you on the right path to feeling better. And then, of course, we start dealing with the spirit. Okay, what does that mean for you? It means that you need to be practicing your spiritual practice every day. It's not a every once in a while kind of situation. We got to make sure that we're taking that time, whether it's going to be your morning yoga practice, whether it's going to be, say, your meditation, whether it's, say, to have your daily devotional. That is all important to start your day. So making sure that you're starting your day out, you're getting your spirit filled up. And ready to pour out onto others the rest of the day, because that's what we do. And then the other part of that is, the mental. So I have several counselor friends that I help to connect with people at the moment until I can get myself licensed. And so they're taking care of the mental part. And then the other part of that I do is the self-care part. So that's where we use the oils, we use meditation. I do events starting in the spring. I usually do weekend events every weekend. So that's either, making our bundles for burning. That's what we do indigenously, the smoke. If that's, herbal care in some way or another, if that's supplementation, I take you to get your supplements locally. And then, I'm just really I want to emphasize self-care. Some of those weekends will be going on hikes, like getting 15 people together. Let's go for a walk and intentionally take that walk and get rid of all of that stress that we've accumulated through the week. So it's just really me making sure that I'm taking care of the full individual. And that's what Colley's is about. And then, of course, I do all of the MHFA and all of the QPRs for free. So if you have your office wants me to come and do a QPR where teaching you the signs, the referrals, everything that you need to know about suicide prevention, email me. I'm there. I do it for free. Because it's so important to me for suicide prevention to get that out there. And then that usually opens up a door to self-care and making a self-care plan, which I love to do with people. I say, you're always, my grandmother always said, each life is like a flower in the garden. And she said, you're putting hope when you plant that seed. And that seed needs the right nutrition. It needs all of the right minerals to make it begin to grow. And then sometimes it needs stability to grow, like your big sunflowers. It needs to be stabilized. So what does your community look like? Who are your people that you can call on that stabilize you to help you? And then, as the flower grows, it needs to be taken care of and it blooms. Well, you still have to take care of that flower. And even in its process of as we live, there's the process of dying. And it's taking care of that and making sure that even that process is nurtured. And there's a way of nurturing that body through that process. So, I take her wisdom is what it really was. And even going through, biology and chemistry and things of that nature. I mean, I was like one of the kids, in the class that was like, my grandmother said that. She didn't know but she knew enough from, her indigenous practices. She knew how to take care of herself and how to take care of others. How to be a light, really, in the darkness.
How can people find you?
So you can either find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. It's Colley Organic Sessions. Yes, so KILI apostrophe S ORGANIC and then Sessions SESSIONS. So that's on Facebook. Or you can it's the same spelling, Colley.Organic Sessions gmail.com. I love everybody to email me. Let me know what you're looking for. If I cannot provide it myself, I have plenty of partners that can supply it for you.
Wonderful. I will have that information in the show notes so that they can link to your Facebook. And also, I think you said you got a website in the works, but
yes.
we'll link to that so people can find you. So
yes.
We've got we're kind of actually over time, but I wanted us to have plenty of time to talk about some of these important topics.
Mm-hmm.
But one final question I ask everyone, I want you to finish this sentence. Legacy her way means.
Legacy her way means compassion, leaving love and empathy, and leading with your heart. That's your legacy.
Well said. Very well said. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us about, the wonderful legacy that your grandmother left you and that you are leaving on countless people, whether it's those who you've talked to on the 988 line. So 988 if you are suicidal or know someone who is. But you have certainly left your legacy on so many people. And I thank you for the work that you've done on behalf of those who are or have been suicidal or have family members who are, but also your work with the Indigenous people. We won't go into it because we're closing up, but I've worked with trafficking victims as well. And so the work that you did with MMIW.
Yes, MMIW, yes.
Okay. That was interesting to me. So there was so much to talk about, but we'll only have a short period of time. But again, thank you, Kali, for joining us today. And there'll be a link in the show notes for people to reach out to you. So for those of you listening, thank you so much. I hope that you learned something today. I hope that something spoke to you, that you won't be afraid to say something if you see something, that you will speak up and help people who are struggling around you, that you will be the hope. Because Kali can't reach everybody, but you can reach those in your community. And so be the hope that they need. And I will let Kali, what is your favorite quote?
Oh, it's Mahatma Gandhi. It's be the change in the world. Everybody be the change in your world. You can do it.
Be the change that you want to see.
That's it.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. If this episode spoke to you, be sure to subscribe to Legacy Her Way so you don't miss the next episode, and leave us a comment. Share this episode so that others can get the hope that they need and the help that they need if they are suicidal. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you in the next conversation.